Ladies and gentlemen, please join in welcoming Kent Emerson, President of the Empire Club of Canada, to the podium.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. From One King West Hotel in downtown Toronto, welcome to the Empire Club of Canada. For those of you just joining us through either our webcast or podcast, welcome to the meeting. Today we present Phil Verster, President and Chief Executive Officer at Metrolinx, for today's topic, transit development. It is not the first time we have had a speech of great importance on transit at the Empire Club of Canada. In 1954, Peter Thorncraft, President of London's prestigious Board of Trade, came to Canada from England to address the Empire Club and to open the International Trade Fair. Since the talk of the town was not only the International Trade Fair in 1954, but also the newly opened Young Subway, Mr. Thorncraft used his speech entitled Combined Operations to talk about the newly minted subway as a shining example of cooperation between Great Britain and Canada. Here's a quote from that speech. The United Kingdom and Canada have learned to cooperate with mutual benefit in exciting developments right across the country. One of the best examples is in the city is formed of the Toronto subway. Those beautiful cars in which you have traveled were built in the ancient city of Gloucester in the shadow of Cosbelt Hills. The rails on which they run were made in Canada and the United States. Those glass surfaces which you have admired in the stations were rolled in Yorkshire and put together in Ontario. The signal system came from London. The steel lies embedded from the United States, Great Britain, Belgium, Germany, and Luxembourg. Truly an international project, unquote. Today, I know there's lots of talk about various governments and what each level will be responsible for. The example I read you shows that in the past, we've dealt with levels of governments that were far from our shores to establish our GTA transit system. Today, with a new provincial government, a re-elected Toronto City Council, and a federal government that is imminently seeking re-election, what could possibly go wrong? But if we worked together in 1954, we can do it again today. There are challenges. Challenges in building new transit in the GTA were well defined by a 2014 speech to the Empire Club by the chair of Metrolinx at that time. Quote, "The success of Toronto must be the starting point for any discussion of transit and transportation. Our challenge is a direct consequence of our success. Our success as a city region has outstripped our infrastructure to accommodate our growth. What was adequate in the 60s, 70s, and 80s is not adequate for Greater Toronto in the 21st century," unquote. To deal with these challenges, the new Ontario government has announced a new transit plan that includes uploading the subway to the province's control, and legislation on that will be introduced today. And in that landscape, we turn to today's guest to explain it all to us. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer at Metrolinx. He oversees a team committed to transforming transportation in Greater Golden Horseshoe. Prior to joining Metrolinx, he has managed train operations, infrastructure builds, and infrastructure management for passenger rail systems in England, Scotland, and Ireland. He began his career in his native South Africa in the electricity sector. He spent several years in the UK at Bombardier Rail and the Irish Rail. In 2011, he joined Britain's Network Rail, where he managed the second largest route in the system. He ran Scotland's passenger rail service and served as Managing Director of Network Rail's East-West Railway. Phil joined Metrolinx in October 2017. His comprehensive knowledge and extensive transit background has equipped him with the necessary tools Metrolinx requires to continue working toward delivering an integrated regional transportation system that will serve the needs of residents and businesses for years to come. Please welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Metrolinx, Phil Verster.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kent. Thank you very much to the club. It's fantastic to be here. So many faces and people I know, and so many new people we'll meet today. For those of you that know me will know there are probably two things that I'm sort of switched on about. I want to get things done, and I fervently believe Metrolinx can always be better. Any organization I lead, I have this fervent belief it can be better at what it does. And so when I got this invitation, it was sort of a puzzle for me of what to talk about, because there's not much happening in transit, is there? But I wanted to give a different spin to this discussion today. And so I asked my teams to go out and look for a single photograph of a picture of a big thing we do with a single caption to it. Because I want to do justice to what our minister, Jeff Urek, says to me whenever I meet him. It's for the people, and he used the expression yesterday, it's for the real people. What are we doing on a day-to-day basis, and what's real for what we deliver out there? I know, lots of nice philosophical debates about big things and all what the future would look like and all of that, but you know what really matters is what we do now. And so I searched for all of these across the organization and got all of this stuff back, and by yesterday, there was about 120 ideas. And I said to the team, look, I only have 3.5 hours to present, so I can't use 120. And what I've done today, and it's the first time I'm going to do this, so it's probably going to fail, yeah? I've taken 50 slides, and I'm going to click to them really quickly, yeah? So if you are here for 3.5 hours, you've been warned, yeah? So let's see how far we get. The thrust of the presentation is about what is getting done. And it's really urgent for all of us to strike the right balance. When we see things, we can sometimes get locked up into philosophical debates, while what's really important is to provide a service for those people every day that are dependent, those customers. I say to my team, when I'm on the concourse at Union, and I do that every week a couple of times, I'm humbled by what I see when people come off our trains and off our concourses and off the TTC, and the huge number of people that are dependent on transit. And I think we need to ground ourselves in that philosophy of Minister Urek. So let's go. Downsview Park, completed in 2018. New connection with Line 1. 69,000 people a year that benefits from this investment. Guildwood GO station. New station facilities, new amenities, totally reworked platforms, totally different connections, tunnels, pedestrian tunnels under the track, changes to the southern end of the parking space to give more access to our parking facilities. Oshawa, 856,000 people that benefit from that every year. Spend $14 million on it. Better facilities, more accommodation for retail capability, but mostly simple things like washrooms, better reception, better wickets where we can sell tickets and where we can serve our customers. A key node for us in our network. Renfrew, all the way connecting, 18 kilometers, 12 new stations, connecting us from all the way from Winston Churchill through to Renfrew. 10,000 people per day benefiting from this facility. Bus services here, Mississauga buses, GO buses, fantastic service, really important for Mississauga. York Viva Next, $1.7 billion, 9 million people, 9 million boardings a year. Huge change. Journeys and most part of that transit network reduced by about 35%, and the ridership continuously increasing. And a fantastic big impact. 43 stops over a 34.6 kilometer overall network. A huge impact to that region. And now let's look a little bit at stuff that's happening that most of us hear about, sort of experience depending on where you drive. You may experience it in terms of what we do at Eglinton, but where I dare say very many people are not aware of the huge amount of activity that's going on underneath the surface of Toronto. Keelsdale Station. Keelsdale Station has got about 2,300 square meters of decking that keeps the station protected so that traffic can travel across it. Look at the cavern there of where the station is going to be. That's work that's in progress currently, aimed for completion by next year. Sort of 5 basketball courts of surface covers the Kielstelle station and the development. Completion due for 2021. And a very exciting first station. This is the first station that work really started on the Eglinton subway. Eglinton itself. Eglinton has 269 square meters of excavation, the biggest on the whole route. There'll be a station about 20 meters underground. And what's so exciting about Eglinton, 8,200 people in the peak will be, in the morning AM peak, will be using this facility. Now that would tally up around 20,000 during the period of a day. And if you think of line 1, its busiest part of the morning would be carrying 35 to 40,000 people a day. So fantastic infrastructure that is being built now and being delivered now. And sometimes the things we do is not always that visible, it's not always that clear. But let me show you this one, which is, I find really amazing. Not everyone would know that Eglinton Crosstown passes underneath the subway at Eglinton itself. And when you look carefully, therefore, and you see those yellow pillars, and you see the crossbars or needle bars that goes across, or I-beams that go across, there are, in terms of that excavation, there's a complicated engineering solution with a set of hydraulic jacks that sits across that red band of needle bars, allowing the excavation, and then if there's a 3 millimeter deviation, those hydraulic jacks kick in to keep the subway that's above it at the right position, at the right place, and to minimize deviation to ensure safe operation. 3 millimeters. Take 7 business cards and put them on top of each other. 7 business cards on top of each other is the system's accuracy in terms of making sure the deviation on the subway is contained. This is a huge engineering, important activity that makes the building of a transit possible. And when you think of Eglinton itself, there where you see the D is where Eglinton would pass through, east to west, and you can see the subway where A is going north to south. And then there's Avenue. So Avenue is a different technique of building a station. We call it mining. And so we create the excavation on the side of the road and then tunnel and mine towards the center area where we create the space for building the station and the track. 1,250 people per hour in the morning peak. And lead, have a look at that, the size and the scale of it. Lead would be where we have a portal where we exit on the eastern side of Eglinton. And the huge benefit of lead being the way it's designed is we'll have a turn-back facility that will make sure that we can operate the services on time and very effectively and recover services pretty quickly. Mount Dennis, 3,500 people in the peak. Fantastic station which will link up to a TTC bus terminal, create an interface with GO as well as with Up Express. And then interesting things again. Kodak Building 9 has a heritage interest, but it stood right where we had to dig foundations. So the 3,000-ton building was put on a frame and moved 200 feet out of the way to allow building work to happen, and was moved back and retained and will now become a secondary entry to the station, as well as a big building for office space. Working closely with the community on something that's crucial to community success, as well as to heritage and to all of that. These things aren't always known, but this is really cool stuff. Kipling, $73 million we're spending on that. Look at it. It's going to be a facility that links the GO line, GO bus, together with TTC bus and the TTC underground as well, and connected in a first regional multimodal transfer. First of its sort, really. We feel first of its sort, really, in a regional sense in Canada, and a huge regional mobility hub with great benefits. 800 more parking spots to the 1,600 we already have at Cooksville. New station building, new platforms. 499,000 people every year benefiting from that. I think the importance here is we seem to forget that there's a lot of stuff happening on an ongoing basis. At Agincourt, 134,000 customers every year. New station building, new subway, a new passenger subway connection, and building a 2-track section. And at Agincourt and Milliken and Unionville, we're spending $250 million, 254 million exactly, to get these stations into a good place. At Milliken itself, we're adding obviously the 2nd track all the way up the Stouffville line. That gives us the opportunity to run trains at a higher frequency. A big focus on delivering these stations as quickly and as urgently as possible. 195,000 people every year benefits from that. At Unionville, 300 more stations, relocated platforms, modernization of the platforms, and a big impact for that part of the line. Bloomington is a brand new terminus station on the Richmond Hill line. Roughly 253,000 people would be using this facility, our estimate. Still new. But have a look at that huge parking facility at the back. 1,070 new parking spaces. New bus drop-off and terminal and passenger pickup and drop-off facility. Bramley, we're adding 1,300 parking spaces to the existing 2,600. We are putting in a new pedestrian and passenger underground walkway. Total renewal of how you get access from Bramley Road, and a better access from Bramley Road, and more facilities to make sure we get better change around of people at our station itself. Confederation, brand new station on the Grimsby sub. Big benefits for us as a connection just one step down from West Harbour, and a huge market to exploit in the Grimsby and Niagara region. Mimico. In Mimico, we've just completed, as we've announced and discussed, we've just completed an agreement with Van Dyke, which is the developer, about how we trade air rights for an investment in our station. 335,000 customers will benefit directly from a refurbished station, which would not require any investment from the taxpayer. And similarly, when we think of Woodbine, which is about 136 million investment, which we don't have to make because we've secured that agreement and a deal with a developer of choice. And here you can see we took a little bit of liberty. It's not built yet, so we've taken a brilliant photo of one of the TTC stations on the recently extended Spadina line, and we'll have the same ambition to create that type of feel that you get from those great stations. 13,600 people using 485 buses a day travel from Union Station bus terminal. And here's our new bus terminal is on the ground level of the CIBC building down at the lakefront. At Eglinton Crosstown, this is where we started to put track down. We've got 14.6 kilometers of track. The maintenance facility built and opened in 2018. That was a photo I liked because it showed a lot of activity, but it's now completed, so it's very dreary, a lot of concrete everywhere. But that photo shows the excitement of how much work has been done in this area. And Mount Dennis, first place where we started to put down track, that's completed and that's moving forward. On the Stouffville line, we're putting double tracking up there that will allow us to run a massively frequent service, very much aligned with some of the requirements of the mayor, as well as of our business case for Go expansion, to achieve that high frequency from that part of the region all the way up the Kitchener line, and a very exciting forward way of looking. If you consider the walls on the side, these are sound protection for the local communities, agreed with the local communities and implemented and built with their support. And on the Hamilton Junction and Hamilton line, we've done so much work on junctions such as this to enable us to run the services out to Niagara, real stuff getting into the ground. And this allowed us this year to announce that services to Niagara will run 4 years early, which is an objective of our minister and our government. And similarly, we're spending just over $100 million on getting a tunnel built on the 401 to give us further 2 tracks to expand the service on the Kitchener line, which is an unambiguously important objective for us because of the development potential it brings in that part of the province. And then Whitby Rail facility. This is a monster of a facility. It's huge, and it's one of the biggest facilities that I've ever been in. But this facility would help us to run the expanded services. We opened it last year, and that was an $850 million investment. And it sets us up and takes off the critical path, the creating of facilities. It sets us up for the expansion of GO in the years to come. Kitchener-Waterloo facility runs 33 bus services in the region. New facility serves that community to the extent that is really crucial. We've replaced 6 bridges on the Lakeshore West, all bridges older than 100 years. And many of you that are in this room have been involved in some of these projects. This is one of the more interesting ones where we stop services over weekends and pack in very small periods of time, huge amounts of working to get these bridges renewed. And this particular Humber Bridge deck was totally renewed, and it's about 300,000 tons of ballast had been moved in the recovery of these 6 bridges. Huge works in terms of redecking and renewal to last another 100 years going forward. These are key arteries for us, obviously, so it's really important to get this right. And there you can see the track surfacing where we have very interesting and smart equipment. The yellow monster you see there has preset panels of track that it puts down on the track and helps us to lay the track in a good and productive way. No presentation would be good without the Pickering Bridge, infamous. It's the longest bridge, 250 meters. I'm told it's one of the longest footbridges in the world. Crosses 14 road lanes, 4 tracks. It's lit up at night, as you can see, lovely, lovely. And it took a long time to complete that. Yeah. It's not an example of great work because but it's an example of lessons as an organization we need to learn and be better at. It's right to put that up there because learning from what you do wrong is important. Last week, the Bombardier vehicles delivered to us, they were delivered a few weeks late, not a few months late. The Bombardier vehicle ran for its first time under power. It's a huge success because one of the first things that in my organization, Metrolinx, have set out to do is to make us work like a business, to be more commercial in the decision-making we do, to be more commercial in how we think about our relationships and our contracts. Good relationships are underpinned by good commercial clarity. In 2017, fixing the contractual issues and dispute with Bombardier was one of the first things we put in place. That has enabled us to have the right leverage to make sure the delivery is what it should be. And to have the first vehicles run under own power on our own patch 2.5 years before completion of the project is exactly where we want to be. Then we've got 8 of these. These are probably the biggest locos in the world. This is called Tier 4. It's a diesel electrical, which we've added recently to the fleet. And they allow us to expand our services significantly. Working closely with Alstom, we've got an alternative supplier now at Brampton, and that facility has been set up. I'd like you to look at this. What this shows is that from September 17 to September 20, we will add 50%. Say that again. 50% capacity to GO services. Previous estimates by GO was for much less, 2 to 3% per year. We've looked at how to do things efficiently. How do you run your fleet efficiently? How do you run your whole operation and your logistics efficiently? And last year, we achieved 22.6%. This year, we are on target to achieve another 15% to bring us to, by the end of this year, to a 40% increase in services. And our Minister Jurek, is adamant that this is the type of strategy that is necessary to bring our services to the people of Ontario. Kids go free, really important announcement, really big step to get children under 12 to travel for free and to cultivate the service patterns, the service behaviors that we would like to see. Our Presto adoption rate now, a year ago we were at 12 or 15% for TTC. Yesterday it was at 65%. And that products we've rolled out on Presto, different monthly passes, annual passes and the like, over the last year has made a huge difference. And therefore, Presto adoption is now so high across all of the agencies. The momentum we have behind Presto is just magnificent and it's fast. Our new app allows you for auto load, for self-load. Customers' response to this functionality has been fantastic. And at 6 stations, we have what we call PC Express, which is where people can order their goods and pick it up on their way home, supported by, as you can see, Loblaws and Fortinos. The $3.70 fare, which is a reduction of more than $1, has boosted our ridership significantly, and it's part of an overall integrated approach to get footfall and custom to resemble what we are putting in terms of infrastructure. By getting your price ratio right and your value for money equation, you encourage people to use the infrastructure we're putting in place. And this was a big step for us because this brings us closer towards fare integration and working closely with all of the other municipal operators in our region. Working closely with Uber and other sort of ride-hailing firms to provide solutions, first mile, last mile. Uber has been a fantastic deal, and normally transit agencies in other parts of the world contend and compete with the ride-hailing firms. We don't. We've incorporated them into our solution, and that helps us a lot with first mile, last mile solutions. The pet policy is very popular. And then we're into the LRT projects. 32 million people will benefit from Her Ontario. Hamilton, 12.4 million. And these projects are now moving forward and taking us forward as a region. And Finch West, I can say as much about Finch West as I can say about Eglinton, but we ran out of slides. Yeah. We ran out of slides. And I think here's the important thing. And this is the last slide second last slide. Here's the thing. When we talk about transit, there's so much to do. We must achieve quite a lot of things on different fronts. On the one hand, we must get forward planning right. We must come up with those solutions that really work for the people that's going to use it. But we mustn't spend too much time arguing about what the future should look like and forget about delivering what's needed today. And I think we are striking the right balance today. This year, we've struck the right balance. What are the solutions that can work best? Then let's talk about it amongst our organizations and amongst ourselves. Then make decisions. Then let's move. And let's deliver. And many of you in this room are part of our delivery of these projects. And for that, we are very pleased. And so the last slide is probably the one you come for or to see. And it's probably the most exciting slide of all of the others. Because there's such huge momentum in Minister Jurek's mind about what needs to be done to transform transit in the GTA. And this solution, or this proposed program of works, because that's the way I look at it, a program of 4 to 5 big projects, is substantial to the extent that with the momentum that's given to it, will transform how this city works and how the interfaces to other modes of transit, such as GO, such as the regional services, such as the Mississauga My Way service, such as Viva Next, even to the extent that it creates connectivity out further to the regions with the expansion we do in GO, creates a network that transforms the region. And I think the huge benefit of what we are seeing from an agency's perspective over here is that the commitment out there, the excitement. We saw the minister yesterday at the Toronto Regional Board of Trade. The confidence and the excitement he has in the program is huge. And I think in this era that we're in, the next 4 to 5 years, our focus has to be, all of us in this room, pull together, be as effective as possible, sufficiently as possible. Let's get to deliver as much as possible. Thank you very much for listening to me today. Yeah.
That was fantastic, Phil. We're going to do a Q&A session now, so I'm sure all of you are thinking of your questions. In terms of, is there any questions available? We're going to ask you to, when you do ask your question, to use your name and the organization you're from. We have Jehan over here with a microphone, another with Christine over here. So raise your hand if you have a question. And while we're waiting for those with questions, I'm going to ask you, there's so many projects you put up on the screen. What is the one that you think is the most crucial, like of all the projects you're doing?
You see, that's a really good question. But I actually think they're all evenly important. As an organization, clearly, there are bigger value ones and huge ones, such as what we want to do with Go Expansion. But every project affects the local communities. And one of the first things we did as a senior management team in Metrolinx was to figure out again why we are here. We are here to support the communities in the Greater Golden Horseshoe area. And so I take as much interest in what's happening at Bloomington as I take interest in what happens at Mimico. And getting that balance right, for us to always focus on the detail, is really challenging. And the last year and a half has been about how we change our organization to get better at this. And now we're just talking infrastructure, but what about the other stuff that's important? Because one can easily just think about infrastructure and forget about the importance of getting fair strategies right, consultation with communities. We put a regional roundtable in place. Make sure Presto is on a better commercial footing, as we have done in the last year. And I think the challenge for us as an organization is to not pick favorites, to not pick what is the most important, but to constantly look at what our communities and our stakeholders and shareholders are asking, and to try and deliver all of that at the same time.
Okay, we have a question over here.
How do you do? My name is John Campion. I'm a former president of the club. And I would like to know whether you think in the planning that you have, are you creating a transportation system or are you creating an entirely new Toronto? Do you take what you build as to how it's going to impact 50 years hence in the city that we live in?
Thank you for leading with an easy question like that. Without a doubt, the second part of your question. We are into building cities and communities. That's what it has to be. And so let me give you an example. So I personally think the Ontario line is very exciting. We spent a lot of time. We started in October. The minister gave us strong guidance to say, go and think about things. One more chance. And we said to him, give us one more chance. Let's think about how can we transform the city. And I want to call out one part of that thinking there. If you start off, and I'm not criticizing anyone at what's gone before, I'm just saying if you start off thinking you're going to build railways first, you'll make railway decisions. If you think you're going to build subways first, you make subway decisions. And we wanted to build something that changes how the city thinks and works and interfaces. And so one really good example is how do we create an interface at one of the biggest stations we are creating. And that station is what I call the Union Station of the East, or East Harbor. And we're working with the industry and with the local developer, First Gulf, on thinking about how do we create a station there where there's an easy interchange. If you just build a subway solution, you may decide to tunnel under the Don and you're 42 meters deep in the ground over here and you're 5 meters above over here with Go, and 6 flights of stairs to make a transfer. How's that going to work? If you cross the Don, you can put the 2 stations right next to other. People can probably walk cross-platform. Or just, isn't that going to be easier? Isn't that going to be more natural? Is that going to be perhaps more practical as well as our communities work together? So your question is really at the heart of good transit planning. And I'm not criticizing anyone by having said that. I just think we should all be going through this stage, which we're doing now. We're working very closely with the City of Toronto, very closely with TTC and Rick Leary and his team. They're fantastic people in those organizations. And we're building up a series of options to figure out how we make the Ontario line as effective as possible to achieve a city outcome and a community outcome, rather than just be another really sexy train. I like trains, by the way.
Hi, my name is Arif Rafiq. I'm with Esri Canada. The investments in the infrastructure are undoubtedly staggering. I've seen some of the investments that Metrolinx is taking place for the parking facilities. You're expanding the parking facilities. I also saw the lovely pedestrian bridge on Pickering. Could you comment on how much of this infrastructure, if any, is going towards encouraging more active forms of transportation to get to the system, like cycling or pedestrians?
I love that question. I'm the proud owner of 77,000 parking spaces. And I'm in the process of building 23,000 more. And I think more parking spaces is not the answer for transit. So we have this huge dichotomy where the future of transit in the City of Toronto has to be about a network of connectivity whereby people can get out of the house, walk past the car that stands in the driveway, and find a way to get to the closest station, which is where the network comes in. There's a huge behavioral change. And that is one of the reasons why the example I gave you about how do we make a solution where transfers between modes of transit is now so important. The easier you make it for people to travel, the better. Now, I've got a very, very active agenda where I'm currently approaching automobile manufacturers to say, come and run an autonomous vehicle trial in my region. Come and let's figure out how we agree how to overcome and figure out the regulations so that we can get an autonomous vehicle shuttle that runs automatically to my station and through the neighborhoods. It's always full of 6 people or 8 people, and that reduces car parking requirements and achieves more ease of first mile, last mile connectivity. I've been bugging the ride-hailing firms. I can tell you honestly, I use public transit all the time. I've made a conscious decision not to buy my own car. I Uber, I Lyft, I TTC, and I go. And I use My Way, and I use Viva Next, and I use DRT when I'm out in Durham, and I go all the way, I run half marathons up in Collingwood, and get an Uber driver up there. I do that because I fundamentally believe in transit, and I think we must help figure out how do we get new formulas to make it work better. Our stations aren't built well enough for people to walk on sidewalks to get to the station. So for years, we've not focused on the items you raised in your question, and we're looking at that now. More.
We have a question down here.
Hi, excellent presentation. Is that on? Ziggy Krupa of Cedar Croft Consulting, current public appointee of Rebo and a current treasurer and board member of the Empire Club. You had mentioned on the Mimico line the partnership between private and public deal on the air rights over the GO station there. Could you share a little more about that? I think that's really exciting to hear something different and utilizing the space and the assets that the city has.
So it's a challenging equation because very often it's difficult to create a competitive environment around a location where there's already ownership of the root asset, the core asset, which is the property itself. So Infrastructure Ontario and ourselves have put together a joint team, and we've got a very well-developed strategy which we're taking to government during June about how to create the organizational and competitive market dynamics around what we do with sites. Very often, it'll be a site such as the one at Mimico, where there's an incumbent owner. There's no one else that can really get the benefit of the air rights except the incumbent owner. And it's now a question of value and deal with value and say no if the value isn't right and say yes if the value is right. And the one thing about transit-oriented development solutions that we're seeing, and we now have a funnel, a list of about 10 or 12 really big, really important TOD opportunities. Many of the people in the room are potentially involved in that. And what we see in nearly each case is that the specifics and the nature of each of these deals is different. And I think it brings a lot of philosophical issues with it in terms of how we do business. And it brings challenges to how does an agency operate as a business and not as a bureaucracy. Because developers would say to us in rooms, it says, I'm sort of not so keen about doing business with you if you can't be consistent with your decision making and make decisions fast enough that can work with our timeline of decisions. So Minister Jurek's real challenge to us is make this work. Figure out how to get transit-oriented development into a place where it benefits the taxpayer and where it benefits communities. So I probably didn't answer your question as well enough, but I want to give you that sense that transit-oriented development is a fantastic opportunity for the private sector, the public sector to work together. And we as an agency are clued in with IO in terms of how we're going to tackle that. You couldn't really expect me to say more than that. Thank you. More.
This gentleman down here.
Hi, thanks. Afternoon, Phil. It was a good presentation. It's always nice to see the delivery people recognized. I think with the exciting level of investment you currently have on your books, with this future transformational level of investment that you're planning on making across a variety of areas, what is your biggest challenge within Metrolinx, is part A? And part B, what do you see as the biggest challenges for the industries and companies that want to be involved in this journey that ultimately delivers that best customer experience?
Head and shoulders above everything else, the biggest risk for us as an agency and for the industry itself is skilled, competent resources. And that has dimensions to it at different levels. And government has acknowledged that there's an initiative that will work through all of the ministries to make sure that what can be done to broaden the pipes of education in artisanships and different crafts is broadened to get more competent people trained in the region. My biggest concern is senior level experience. I personally came to the region because it's so fantastic. I mean, Toronto is a fantastic place to live. And the challenges here is fantastic. And I think we'll continue to attract people that want to do that. But getting people to, at early stages of their careers, to make big moves is not always possible. And I think collectively, all of us must work as an industry to bring more resources into the industry. Can I lift the second one out? I am fundamentally concerned about our construction techniques across our work sites. Those of you that were sharpish about construction practices would have cringed when you looked at some of my slides. I cringed. There were photos of unsafe working practices nearly everywhere. Equipment lying around where it shouldn't lie around. I still put the slides in because I want to get slides out there. But I am worried about how we internalize as organizations safety into our way of working. What I'm used to in my own organizations in the UK and in that industry is significantly higher levels of safety. And I think an organization that focuses on safety and makes it central is an organization that delivers well, that looks after its people well, typically meets budget, typically meets schedule. If an organization is sloppy, you see it in safety, but you then see it in claims, you see it in rigor. It's a rule of construction that safe organizations are good organizations to contract with. And I would like to see the next couple of years, not like to see only, we're going to drive really hard. I'm starting to not award contracts to contractors on safety criteria. So I'm really intent that what we have to achieve is a higher level of safety in our industry. Those are my two biggest concerns. More.
Hi, I'm Helen Cook. I was wondering what your plans are for a mobile...
Sorry, can you just start again? Maybe the mic was a little low. Give your
Sure.
name and your organization. Thank you.
Hi, Helen Cook from Omers. I was wondering what your plans are for a mobile app that we could use to pay as opposed to carrying the card.
So thank you for that. We've demonstrated a mobile phone app that allows you to have a virtual Presto card. It's in the pipeline. I wouldn't like to say much more about it now, just to say it's going to happen. Right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great, thank you.
I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Jans Goetz to the podium from Siemens to thank our speaker today. Thank you.
So thank you, Phil, for this fabulous and interesting speech. To me, that was another proof whenever I meet with Phil, it's about change, it's about significant change, it's about change to the better, and it's about change happening. And I think you have seen in his slides lots of change, many construction sites going on, but there's also more than just construction. At the end, we talked about safety, and when I came here to Toronto about a year ago, that was one of the first items which struck me, safety mindset. So I found on my GO train seat, I found a little card saying, don't just sit on this, read it. And you turned it around and it was safety advices. And I felt, and probably you felt as well, that when Phil talked about safety, he's very eager about that. And so when you step on a platform with little children and you tell them, don't walk here close to the yellow line, that's something which is probably in many of us, but you still see passengers, not only here in Toronto, all around the world, where that's very different. It's a safety risk. And whatever we do, safety is of utmost importance. And all the rest beyond, it is what we've seen and what we are going to see in the future. It is really a challenging time being here, part of this industry. There's lots of things to be done. And yeah, thanks for the presentation, and thanks for having me here.
Thank you. This is a great presentation today. We had representation from the union, from the people who do the construction at Aecon, from Siemens, who builds the trains. We've had all of you today. We've had the Empire Club of Canada. I also wanted to mention that Councillor Thompson came in the room and, after we did the beginning intros, and I noticed him. Thank you, Councillor. I know you're acutely listening about what's going on here and watching what's happening today. And Councillor Thompson speaking to us 2 weeks from today about the city's vision on a number of things at the Empire Club of Canada at the Arcadian Court on the 16th, and I want you guys all to come to that. We also have, and Jan De Silva from the Board of Trade is going to be sitting down to moderate with him. We have a Canada Fresh Voices panel, a political panel on individuals who are looking at politics for the federal election. We have Perry Bellegarde, National Chief, Assembly of First Nations on May 22nd. Lots of events going on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today, and meeting adjourned.